Tell us about being a film historian.
Um, I got into film history because I grew up in Los Angeles, Hollywood. I was a part of the industry as a kid, and I used to, of course, love movies and visited the studios and the back lots and the ranches, and just got involved with its glamour and interest and the hard work that everybody puts into it, and the magic that happens after people make a film. And you see this all edited and all put together, and it's just amazing of how hard it is what to do a film. So years later, when I was starting to get into historical pictures of Los Angeles and the studios themselves, I noticed that they sent location people out to shoot the different locations around Southern California to be used in films, and that kind of hooked me. The studios themselves, the technology, the locations, and the history of all of it just fascinated me, and that's how I became a film historian.
So I understand that you recently wrote a book about Warner Brothers.
Yes, one of the books I've done several on the Southern California and the studios, and since we are here at Warner's, we're going to discuss the Warner's book. And the Warner's book is really a very concise and condensed history of Warner Brothers in general and the Burbank studio lot. So to squeeze into a book of 128 pages, 230 pictures or so, was so difficult because I could easily write at least 4 volumes in a large book on the history of Warner Brothers, which dates back to the very beginnings of 1912. So this book is quite interesting because it's not just the history of Warner's, it's also history of the film industry in general, and Southern California and Burbank.
And what other books have you written?
I've done, last year I did a book on Paramount. It's only up to 1940, so it looks like I have to continue volume 2, which will go from 1940 to 1980. And then I've done 2 books on Beverly Hills, 2 books on Hollywood, book on Los Angeles theaters. I've done Malibu, location filmmaking in Los Angeles, and Westwood Village, and other books. But every one of these books, and Culver City, Studios of Culver City, so all of these books have film history connected to each and every one of them.
And what's your favorite film?
My favorite film? Gosh, that's hard to say, but I do love Casablanca a lot, of course. And they filmed that, some of the scenes at the LA Metropolitan Airport, which is today Van Nuys Airport. And they, of course, filmed most of it here in Burbank at Warner Brothers. You can get my books pretty much almost any place. Most of the books I've written are from a publisher called Arcadia Publishing. And Arcadia does a series called Images of America. And basically they are little history books, pocket books you hold in your hand, and you can actually use them as a tour guide. And you can get them on Amazon. Of course, Amazon is one of the biggest distributors of the Arcadia books. But all you have to do is just check on Amazon, just put my name in, Mark Wanamaker, and then you can see all the different books that I've done. I've done several past and present books on Los Angeles and Hollywood, and a few other kinds of books too related to Hollywood, the film industry, and of course the stars and the VIPs.
So have you ever worked for a studio?
Yeah, I worked for Universal for many years, actually on payroll. But I've worked as a consultant to all the movie studios on their history, so I work with all of the communication departments, and then each department, everywhere from prop departments to painting departments, on their history, because all the guilds are involved, and unions and guilds relating to all the crafts. So I'm sort of their historian, so I work with all of them and try to show people that a film isn't just magic. It just doesn't appear. There's painters and carpenters and directors and camera people and lighting and all the different crafts that make up this collaborative effort that makes a film.
Ask him what's next. What is
And what's next for you?
Yes, I'm actually putting together a book on the Gold Coast, which is the beach area north of the Santa Monica Pier. And that's where Marion Davies, the famous silent star who was the mistress to William Randolph Hearst, had the biggest house ever built in Santa Monica. And it was actually built on the Santa Monica beach. Today, only a part of it survives. It's now the Santa Monica Conservancy. It's called the Beach House, the Annenberg Beach House. And there's a little museum in there about the history of not just Marion Davies and Hearst, but about Santa Monica and all the famous people that own homes adjacent to hers up and down the beach north of the Santa Monica Pier. So I'm doing that one. I'm doing another book on Venice, California. Of course, I will have a film section in there. And then I'm doing another book on Poverty Row Studios of Los Angeles. And that will be, what that means is small studios that didn't have a lot of money. They would then open a tiny little studio on a shoestring budget. Poverty Row, you get it? They're pleading poverty. And they would make a film like a Western or something with very little money. And this was a tradition in Hollywood since the teens. And to this day, we still have little independent companies making their films for video or whatever. But it's a tradition that people have forgotten about. But the Poverty Row Studios or Poverty Row companies help make Hollywood as it is today. That's how people know about everyone. You know, the B films and C films, the mysteries and little cheap films. It helps. It's not just the big studios, but it helps make Hollywood, located, and I would say in the center. They called it the Mecca of Los Angeles was the film industry, and the little tiny studios help to achieve that.
So how do you see the history of filmmaking change now with the advent of all of the little cameras and people making films now?
The changes in the film industry just in my lifetime in the last 20 years is mind-blowing. I mean, everything from technically speaking. For example, let's just be clear that soon there will be no more film. In other words, people say, well, I'm filming you, but actually they're using a digital camera. There's no film. And just recently, the studios have now discontinued using film on many of their productions. We're talking big productions. And new technology is emerging. There's a new camera called the RED camera. The RED camera is a digital camera that's used for these big blockbuster films. And it's digital. And then all these filmmakers that before could not afford to make any film at home, like Steven Spielberg made his little films when he was a kid at home. I mean, he could afford to have a little camera, 8mm, and make films. Many could afford 8mm, but you had to have it developed. It's expensive for a child or for a young person. Nowadays, you can have a tiniest camera and a little chip and make a whole film on it and edit it in a little editing unit that you can get. And you can do it online even in some cases. So my point is that what is the future of the film industry? It's going to be hard to say. They still, the studios exist for television mostly and big blockbusters. And distribution is really important, home distribution. Now the disc is going to disappear eventually. The CD, the DVDs, they're all going to be digital, streaming your films on television. I mean, wow, I mean, this is what's going to happen to the distribution departments. And as you know, probably everybody knows, how many video stores are around. Blockbuster is now closing, almost all their stores soon. So you really, Netflix they still rent discs. How much longer will that be? They will now stream to you, see. So the history of the film industry has changed dramatically in such a short time now that a new era is emerging. How can I predict what's going to happen? They're already in the theaters projecting digital projection. There's no more film projection. So I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be a brave new world.
And how about the future of the independent features?
There will be more independent people, companies, more things going on because people can afford now to do it. Question is now, how do you get it? The distributing of it. People putting on YouTube and then it's picked up by a studio. I like this idea. So agents and others will have a hard time trying to agent material because it's a free-for-all now. It's just insane. It's just I don't know what to predict. It's as I said, it's going to be unpredictable.
The Wild West right now.
The Wild West, yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.